Sniping and the role of the sniper has long been a subject of myth and misunderstanding. Some people think snipers are assassins. They aren't. Some people think they're merely hunters who go in the wood as some kind of freelance snatchers of life. They aren't. Snipers are superb marksmen, master tacticians, and superb practitioners of fieldcraft. And indeed, these are the three component skills that must be mastered in order to be a sniper: tactics, marksmanship, and fieldcraft. If a sniper is deficient in any one of three, he cannot execute his mission, whether law enforcement or military. Think of sniping as a three-legged stool. If any one of these three legs is shorter than the other, the whole stool will be out of kilter. It's equally true for a sniper. Therefore, we're going to teach you what a sniper must know about all three skill areas: marksmanship, fieldcraft, and tactics. This is a state-of-the-art sniper rifle, the Robar SR90. It's a .308 caliber, has a Remington refined action, which Robar took a standard Remington action and tightened it up. The locking lugs have been lapped so that it closes much more consistently and smoothly than would an off-the-shelf sporting rifle. It sports a target-grade barrel, heavyweight. This is called fluting, in which strips have been cut from the barrel for two purposes. Number one is to reduce weight, and number two, in relative terms, it increases the surface area to improve cooling. Up here at the muzzle, you can see that that's a recessed crown, so as to protect that rifling from any dings which could degrade accuracy. If we look at the back of the stock, and this is a Kevlar fiberglass, and fiberglass, state-of-the-art stock, the cheek can be raised to better align the shooter's eye with the scope. You can as well adjust the butt for the overall length so that it better seats into the shooter's shoulder. And of course, you want to achieve about 3 inches eye relief. The optic on this is a Leupold Ultra Mark IV 16 power Butler Creek scope caps to protect those excellent lenses. It is adjustable by quarter minute of angle increments for elevation. Here, windage is adjustable by 1 minute of angle. And over here is an important knob, focus. By focusing specifically on the target you're about to engage, you reduce even the slightest possibility of parallax. The trigger is about 3 pounds, which is pretty typical for a sniper rifle, and it's a very smooth, refined, polished trigger. Very nice let-off. If you look the way I put my hand on that grip, there's a slight swelling in the pistol grip to reduce the likelihood that you might wrap your finger around it. Remember, for sniper level marksmanship, you want just the bare tip of that finger to be engaging the trigger, and you don't want to be pulling it other than straight back. Now the bipod, this one is equipped with a Parker Hale, which is an excellent bipod, probably about the best made, but as well, many sniper rifles come with the Harris bipod. It's less expensive, very popular. It attaches to the front swivel stud of a high-powered rifle. This is the bipod that is probably used by most police agencies in the United States, and it comes as an extra piece of gear with the M24 sniping system. This sniper rifle fires match-grade ammunition, and only match-grade ammunition should be fired with a sniper rifle. This is .308 168 grain Federal match. A sniper team is outfitted with quite a variety of equipment. While much of it is certainly needed in the field, when you look at what's really critical, what's actually mission essential, it breaks down into 3 different groups: weapons, optics, and communications gear. For weapons, in addition to personal sidearms for self-defense, a sniper team obviously has a sniper rifle. In this case, it's an SR90 Robar. Here we have an SSG made by Steyr. The spotter's weapon is an M16A2, which means it's got the heavier barrel and it fires a slightly heavier 62 grain round for better long-distance ballistic performance. The only addition here could be an M203 grenade launcher to this weapon so that it could fire 40mm smoke and HE to perhaps mask an enemy, prevent him from observing you, cover a withdrawal, etc. In the area of communications, here we have a handy talkie Motorola, very typical of what law enforcement uses today, as well as special operations units. What's unusual about this radio is it has a micro switch, a push to talk for just an index finger for the non-shooting hand of a sniper. That way he can be ready to engage. He's got his trigger finger on the trigger, and yet he can still communicate perhaps to an observer or a sniper coordinator during an on-scene crisis. As well, this is an Eagle headset that includes a special device that can read vibrations off the top of your jawbone, so that you've got both ears clear. You can hear with your normal hearing and yet still communicate right through the jawbones. We've also got voice-activated radios. These are inexpensive ones, but the concept is that you have a combination microphone and earphone in the earpiece, and it's voice activated. You don't have to touch anything with your hand. The sniper can have his hands completely on the weapon and yet be communicating merely by starting to talk. In the area of optics, we've got firstly a spotting scope, absolutely essential piece of team gear. Should be a minimum of 20 power to be effective. No more than 30 power or mirage becomes a problem. At the other end of the spectrum, we've got mini binocs. Those are little 10 powers. Those are very handy because you can quickly pull them out of a pocket to check something out if you detect it with naked vision. And finally, we have some 7x50 Steiner binocs, excellent quality glass, and actually that is probably the key, most important optical item in the team, because you will initially detect target indicators with those binocs. Probably 70% of your surveilling with optics will be with binoculars. And lastly, I have an optical rangefinder there. The team also could have a laser rangefinder, especially when you get to shooting beyond 500 yards. Mere rule of thumb techniques become less and less accurate. You need something more reliable. Now, you want to divide up the duties within the sniper team. The spotter, I'm going to bounce back and forth on these, he observes and adjusts the fire, and of course, meanwhile, it's the sniper who's engaging targets. The spotter leads in the march. That's when they're going generally cross-country, because he's got that M16. And if you should unexpectedly encounter the enemy, he can put out a lot of lead fast. Versus this bolt-action rifle, it's not very good defensively. But when you're stalking, that's when the sniper leads, because he's going to be able to select the best hide, being the first one to go over a piece of terrain. That spotter fires that mass fire defensively. The sniper fires his bolt gun offensively to each target. The spotter's got some additional duties that he stays very busy while the sniper's engaging and preparing to engage. He operates the radio. He's prepared to back up a shot if necessary. This can be critical during a hostage rescue where there's no room for missing. He times wind gusts. Remember, that sniper cannot take his eye away from the scope to start estimating when there's a calm that he can fire through. Finally, he draws up the range card. Both of them, of course, estimate range. Two heads are better than one. They average the differences, and they're probably more accurate. They construct the hide together, and they search for targets. Most of their time in the field is actually spent searching for targets rather than engaging them. And here's an important distinction. Right now, I am the sniper. But after about an hour, looking through this scope, maintaining all that stress, the pressure, being ready to engage, my efficiency starts to decline. Same thing with that spotter. He's been intensely surveilling. About every hour, we rotate weapons, and when we do, he becomes the sniper, and I am now the spotter. Marksmanship is one of the three basic skill areas of sniping, along with fieldcraft and tactics. A sniper realizes that in order to achieve accuracy, he has to achieve consistency. When he achieves consistency, automatically accuracy is the result. And by that I mean by consistent shooting style, consistently using match-grade ammo of the same lot, trying to stay so attuned to what he's doing that he does it exactly the same way time after time after time. The integrated act of firing, I guess you could say that's a little bit like learning how to chew bubblegum, tap dance, and play jacks at the same time. What a sniper strives to do is perform 4 basic skills, mastering each of them and then integrating them simultaneously. Trigger control. He has to be able to release that trigger perfectly, time after time. Body position. He wants to be real solid so the rifle's stable, yet he's comfortable. Sight alignment. If he doesn't have proper sight alignment, he's probably going to cause parallax. He's probably going to push that round a little right, left, up, or down. Breathing. Breathing especially is important, because a lot of people don't understand its full impact. You have to realize that breathing causes your body to move. You breathe out, you breathe in, your chest moves a little bit. Let's look at what this looks like graphically. You breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Well, understanding the cycle, you want to oxygenate your blood a little bit so that you can pause for a second to become a little more solid. So you even deep breathe a little bit. Blow out half of it and hold it. That is called a natural respiratory pause. It's about 5 to 7 seconds. That is when all of this is integrated right in that little window to achieve the most perfect marksmanship. Let's go over and see how our our spotter is preparing to fire. First, let's look at his body position. He's sitting from a bench, so let's take a look at how he's seated the rifle, how he's grasping it. First, we know, because undoubtedly he's a fine marksman, he properly seated that butt in his shoulder. He learned through drills of raising a rifle, putting it in his shoulder and lowering it, how to get it naturally into that deep pocket so it's really solid. Furthermore, he's using his non-shooting hand to hold it solid and pushing back slightly. This also has the effect of reducing the felt recoil because it's solidly against that shoulder. His right hand is on that swelled pistol grip. You see that gap in there? He's got his finger out so that it's going to move independently. He's not going to pull the rifle when he pulls the trigger. And only the tip of his trigger finger is touching the trigger itself. Undoubtedly, he has correct eye relief. He's hopefully set that scope the correct distance from his eye, so that he brings that cheek up to a solid spot on the butt, a spot weld, so that it is at the correct eye relief, and he's got a full scope picture. He's got nothing but clarity out there. Sniper, why don't you go ahead and dry fire? There, did that feel good?
Great.
Okay. One other thing that we could add, this is called a bean bag. You can think of it as kind of a poor man's micrometer for raising the butt on that rifle. With his non-shooting hand, he can put that rifle butt on top of it, and he can squeeze it slightly to raise it or shake it out a little bit to lower it. This is, in essence, a small sandbag. If you don't want to use a military sock, you can cut off the pants from a BDU leg, sew it up, put a little wire on the top. A moment ago I mentioned a scope sight picture to make absolutely sure you understand what that looks like through an optical sight. It should be perfectly clear, the crosshairs centered, no shadow on the sides, no shadows on the top. If you were to shoot through one of these, it would cause the round to tip right or left or go up or down. When it's like this, not only have you got a clear field of view, but you have a correct eye relief of about 3 inches between your eye and that rear ocular scope lens. A sniper has to master his trigger release. He has to shoot over and over and over again in order to do this. Now the trick is, you don't do that live fire, you do it dry fire, because think about it, the recoil from that rifle will mask any sensitivity you may have to the trigger. Now, there's a special drill used by snipers in which they place a coin on the end of the barrel. I've got a quarter here. Go ahead, dry fire. Okay, it didn't move. Let's make it a little more difficult. Rebolt your weapon. Now we're going to put a dime up there. It's narrower, it's more sensitive. Go ahead, dry fire. Waver just a little bit. This is an excellent marksman. That drill alone will probably improve trigger release by 75-80%. When dry firing, though, you should probably use a snap cap, this plastic simulated round, to prevent undue wear or cracking on your firing pin. This will not fire under any circumstance. It's very safe to use. Okay, follow through is a requirement for the sniper to continue to think about the target, maintaining that mental focus and a visual focus on it after squeezing the trigger. It's necessary as a preventative to keep from the bad habit of stopping the focus as you pull the trigger, which will cause you to blow a shot. Now, one thing I can do, and I'm playing the role of the coach here, is I'm looking into a shooting eye. I'm going to watch for the slightest flinch. Go ahead, squeeze it off when it feels good. Oh, I saw a slight movement. Rebolt it. Focus a little harder. I'm helping him. I'm reinforcing him. Go ahead, squeeze it when it feels good. Think through it. Excellent, excellent. That is follow through. That was rock steady. Now let's talk about shooting positions, starting with the offhand or standing position. First of all, you want to seat whatever position you're in. You want to seat the rifle well in your shoulder. Raise it up high, almost shooting at the moon. Get it nice in that pocket. Rotate it down. Now observe the way my elbow is tucked in well against my body. That's because this rifle, any heavy-barreled sniper rifle, is barrel heavy. In order to support it, you've got to really bring that elbow back against your body. But that creates a problem from your breathing, affecting the movement of your chest. What it really means is the offhand is a weak position. You want to reinforce it whenever you can with support, such as this tree. But you don't want to have your rifle touch it. That's a hard-to-hard contact. You always want a hard to soft or soft to hard. By intervening something such as your hand, or if you're in the prone laying on a log, put your field jacket over it. But here, if you'll see, I'm going to put my arm against the tree, but the rifle is actually supported by my hand. I'm in here good and solid. I'm ready to engage. Now let's take a look at the sitting position. Our spotter is in one of two sitting positions. Note that his elbows overlap his knees. He does not want that bone-to-bone contact of elbow to knee bone, because the cushioning effect of the flesh to flesh or muscle to muscle, it's a far more solid position. And the second variation on a sitting is with your feet apart. He tries to keep his feet as flat as possible for the terrain because that improves stability as well. And what we're talking about is being stable and calm when we shoot. And now the last position I'm going to demonstrate is the prone, which the temptation from all the old cowboy movies is to take your barrel and protrude it from cover. Wrong. You're highlighting your position. Back off some. Try to stay as low as you can. Sure, you've got a bipod on it, but unless you absolutely need to get the elevation from that bipod, don't use it. Use your hand or a sandbag. A sandbag would be a bit more stable, but here, right there, I'm as stable as can be. To keep his mental focus and that meticulous attention to detail for each shot he takes, the sniper indeed documents and records it. First, as you can see, he recorded all the background data for shooting today, to include the location, the wind and weather conditions, which rifle he's using. Today, you can see he's emphasizing trigger control in his practice. He's just fired his first shot from the bench. Go ahead and mark where you'd called it, where you believe that you had placed it. Okay, a sniper had gone for a throat shot. I got out the spotting scope. I was coaching for him as his teammate. I plotted it right there, dead center of the throat. Go ahead and plot it. So there's shot number one, and he would do the same for each shot for 10 shots. When this page is done, he goes to the next. Paper's cheap. Finally, it could be a drill, a shooting drill of some kind. It could have a time limit in which he would record how much time he required. It could have involved range estimation, where he would have written here his estimated distance to the target and the actual one. It's through using a card like this kind of a shooting record, that he ultimately develops this, which is a ballistic data card specifically for his rifle, using all the data for that match grade 308 that he fires. Now, once all this data is together, he knows how high he must compensate for various distances. He knows how to compensate exactly for wind. He starts off with book data, modifies it based on real-world experience. Then he can take this card and his ghillie suit, he can glue it right here so he can look at it as he's getting ready to shoot. He could glue it to the butt of his rifle. Ultimately, he memorizes it. A sniper employs several shortcuts when zeroing his rifle. First, he has a competent gunsmith use a bore sight so that already there's pretty close alignment between his scope and his rifle barrel. Second, when he arrives on a range, he cuts paper on a target at only 25 or 50 yards, so he's certain that he knows where it's going to hit. Then, he zeroes it for the appropriate distance for his agency. Law enforcement, typically that's 100-yard zero. Some military units, 300 or 600 yards. If you're using a scope with a bullet drop compensator on the top, its specifications will tell you 200 or 300 yards. When you're zeroing, you're going to zero either for civilian match, such as this Federal 168 hollow point match, or the military special ball M118. They are not specifically the same. If you zero for this, you've not zeroed for this. Secondly, once you have zeroed, also record that lot number, because you will be shooting ammo off just that lot number, and if you must go to another, then you test fire ammo from that next slot and shoot just from it. Here's an array of assorted targets, starting on the left with the zeroing targets. The upper one is actually a little more suited for sniping because you can clearly see dark lines where you can align the crosshairs of your scope. This is a good general purpose target, just good for bullseye type practice, as well as you can take a black spacer, put it on just about anything. That's a good challenging shot for 100 yards. When you start getting to drills and more realistic practice, a realistic target is suited. The only thing I might change here is to Xerox an actual face and put it over it. When it comes to reactive targets, targets that do something when you hit them, that are fun to shoot, and remember, keep shooting fun, you keep shooters interested. Different colored balloons, it could represent different types of targets. Remember to keep them proportional to the distance, 200, 300, 400 yards. Other reactive targets, you take a dozen milk cartons, put them on a hillside, and now you've got both a spotting exercise and a marksmanship exercise. For 100 yards, shoot raw eggs or golf balls. That's real fun in comradely shoot-offs, a little sniper competition. 200 yards or greater, a clay pigeon. And finally, these Chinese exploding targets. If you can place a round in that orange center, it will go boom in a big way. It's one thing to shoot on a perfect day off a bench. It's quite another to shoot realistically, which means under stress. To drill yourself so you're ready for the rigors, both mental and psychological, of real sniping, you need to induce stress, both physical and psychological. We're going to demonstrate one drill that's designed to do exactly that. Sniper, are you ready?
Ready.
They're gonna kill you! Quick! Quick! You saw they're shooting! Quick! Quick! Now, I did a dirty trick. He didn't know I was going to shout at him. But the whole point is that to induce that kind of stress, you do such things as, without the sniper realizing it, pour water on his neck just as he's starting to get a sight picture. Or, say, put a boombox radio next to him, and if he likes rap music, you play country western, and vice versa. You need to induce that stress to make the shooting drill realistic. Probably the most critical fieldcraft skill a sniper must learn to master is accurate range estimation. The cause of most long-range misses is inaccurate range estimation. Now, the quickest, most accurate means of range estimation is using a field map or a topographical map. With it, if you have enough landmarks around, such as if you look before us, we've got a saddle, we've got two hills, we've got a dirt road running between them, there's visible water off in the distance. I know I'm on high ground. I can probably accurately estimate all the distances around me purely through using that map. Now, some other techniques, when you don't have a map available or there aren't as many handy landmarks. First, football fields. Many people know what the distance is. It's like a mind's eye thing of how far a football field will look before you. Break it up into these increments of football fields, 100 yards per football field. A second technique is called 1/2 the distance. You use that when the distance is so great that you're concerned you're going to be wrong. Pick a point half that distance, use the football field technique, then double it, and you'll be far more accurate. The last technique is called the thumb technique. This goes all the way back to the old frontier musketeers in the United States, pioneer history, when for estimating short-range distances, when you extend your arm all the way out and hold up your thumb, it subtends or equals widthwise about what a man's stride would be, or 30 inches at 50 yards. All you have to do is know that if a man is as far away as your thumb and it would take one step to walk the width of your thumb, he's 50 yards away. If it would take 2 steps, he's 100 yards away. If it would take 3 steps, he's 150 yards away. Now this is only good for short range, because once you start trying to divide it up too finely, you'll no longer be accurate. But remember, especially police officers, most sniper engagements are short range, not long range. The sniper team carries 2 optical devices that provide accurate range estimation. First would be binoculars that contain a ranging reticle inside, such as these Steiners, or a quality sniper scope that includes a mil-dot reticle. These little dots are 1 mil apart. Here in these Steiners, we have a scale that shows in increments of 10 mils. You use both to measure distant targets to estimate range. And here's what happens. Either you're using yards or meters all the way through, but it works either way. You estimate the size of an object in mils. That is, you use your binoculars, you look at the object or your rifle scope, and you very exactly measure how large or wide it is in mils. Then you figure out how much real world that object is in yards. For instance, I looked at a distant telephone pole that I know in this area. All the telephone poles are 3 yards high. So I took that 3 yards times 1,000. When I lifted my binoculars to them, I found that they were 8 mils high. Therefore, it is 3 times 1,000, which is 3,000, divided by the 8 mils, which equals 375 yards. This is the most accurate technique, short of using a laser rangefinder. Most long-range shooters eventually learn how to accurately estimate range, but what really ultimately separates the men from the boys is accurately estimating wind, which equally can impact on the accuracy of long-range shots. Let's take a look here. A 90-degree crosswind is what is normally called a full factor. Full factor. That is, here's the target. The wind is directly from your right or left. What confuses a lot of shooters is that an oblique wind from any direction is not 1/2 the indicated ballistic value of a crosswind. It's 3/4 the effect, because that wind so quickly affects the drift of the bullet by virtue of its shape. In fact, by the time it's a 1/4 oblique crosswind, already you should be compensating using half that value. To better understand how wind reacts to the terrain it moves through, visualize the wind as if it were a water current. Looking before us, you can see we've got a variety of lowland, relatively flat. We've got a tree line, a couple of ridges. Now let us assume that the wind is coming, as it actually is here, from right to left. It would roll rather high over the top of these hills. On the reverse slopes, there'd be almost no wind up close. It would probably actually be a little faster rolling down this road. By the time it gets here, again, it's back down to the surface, and the tree line will cause it to buffer a little bit, but there will still be a higher velocity down that road. You must be able to read all the different winds within there in order to understand how that will impact on your bullet's flight. The technique most often used by sniper teams for estimating wind speed is by how it affects things. Firstly, at 3 to 5 miles per hour, you'll start to feel it on your face, but it's important to understand we're talking about thresholds, because by the time it's moving 5 to 8 miles per hour, not only do you feel it on your face, but it's now moving leaves continuously. By 8 to 12 miles per hour, loose paper is blowing on the ground. By 12 to 15 miles per hour, small trees are swaying. And finally, at 17 miles per hour, you'll see whitecaps starting on open water. But be advised, after it hits about 17 to 20 miles per hour, you probably wouldn't even shoot in a crosswind. When you see heat waves shimmering above the Earth's surface, which is present summer and winter, what you're actually looking at is mirage. A lot of long-range shooters don't realize it, but they can exploit the capabilities of their spotting scope to read that mirage to determine the wind speed and direction. You need at least 20 power, but it still works well up to 30 power. Here's how the technique works. Think of this as, let's say, smoke rising from a chimney. When there's no crosswind, that smoke rises straight up. But now you're starting to gently get a crosswind. Just as that smoke would start turning a little bit, the same thing happens to those heat waves. When it's at 60 degrees, it's 1 to 3 mile per hour crosswind. When it's at 45 degrees and you got a stronger wind, it's pushing it down flatter, 4 to 7 miles per hour. And finally, by the time that wind is 8 to 12 miles per hour, that shimmer is visibly horizontal to the earth. Some old-time shooters will claim that they can estimate up to 20 plus miles per hour because they've practiced mirage readings so much that they can read how flat those lines are and determine wind speed. But something else you can do with that mirage is determine the wind direction. And that is, you rotate your spotting scope slowly to the right and slowly to the left, and eventually you'll find a position where it starts broiling and boiling in your field of view. Where you find that, that is the direction the wind is coming from. So how do you compensate for wind? Well, the first and obvious technique is to use the windage knob on your scope and adjust it right or left to compensate. The second technique, if you have a wind that's too high velocity to compensate on the scope, is number one, reduce the distance to 100 yards or less, as police often do, and thereby you minimize the effect so it will not disrupt your shot. But if you don't really want to close with that target, if it's too dangerous for you, dramatically reposition yourself upwind or downwind to neutralize the wind altogether. The sniper team's optics are an integrated family in which the sniper team exploits the capabilities of each device for each situation as it appears. Mini binocs are excellent because you can have them right in your pocket, pull them out fast to investigate a target indicator. These are probably the most often used optics in the team. Binoculars are great for detecting target indicators covering large areas of terrain. When they find a target indicator, it's the spotting scope that becomes the investigative tool by which they determine what it was that the target actually is. And finally, the sniper employs his sniper scope both to spot and to engage targets. Not meant necessarily because it's the best device for detecting targets, but it's going to be up close to his eye anyhow. Now, how do they all work together? First of all, your naked vision scans a wide area until it comes upon a target indicator. Or, to supplement naked vision, and you're starting to reduce the field of view but increase magnification, the team employs binoculars. The rifle scope will be the next optical device for having a slightly tighter field of view, but probably with a magnification close to or only slightly greater than the binoculars. And finally, really zooming in on that target, really magnifying it to the most, but with the tightest field of view, will be the spotting scope. To be effective, a sniper team needs to understand the pros and cons of an assortment of camouflage colors and patterns. Looking first at these desert patterns, this plain tan is fine if you highlight it a little bit. This was our original Desert Storm pattern. It was found to be a little bit too contrasting. That's why it's been rendered obsolete by the newer desert pattern. You know, that's a little mellower and blends together. Next, if we'll look at the winter patterns, ask yourself, where have you seen that much brown with snow on the ground? I think that's for catching fishermen rather than fish. West German pattern just above it, excellent for pine country. Next to it, to the left, is a U.S. winter over white that I've highlighted a little bit to add some late winter streaks of gray. Coming down, we've got two very popular police patterns here. Problem for sniping is that silhouettes you very clearly. It's okay for an entry team where you want to intimidate a foe, never for a sniper. All you've done is define the target for a bad guy. Same with this. This is inappropriate. In fact, originally the manufacturer called this pattern snowflage, not urban camouflage. It's very dangerous. It highlights you. Here we have a British or Rhodesian pattern. It's fairly good, very modeled, very irregular. Now we're going to look at some civilian patterns in the background here. All of these would work in northern woodlands. You notice this one over on the right is a little more brown, would lend itself perhaps to mountain country or desert. Those are both realtree. The realtree green would lend itself better to northern woods. We've got mossy oak and tree bark. Those are decent. We've got two colors of mirage. Mirage fall, mirage spring. The last two military patterns to look at is the famous from Vietnam tiger stripe. Problem, it's polarized. Shadows in the woods, if they're running in the opposite direction, will highlight you. You want to blend in, not contrast what's around you. This is a very nice uniform. It's the Desert Night developed for Desert Storm. It will confuse an enemy's IR attempt to illuminate you in the dark. But other than that, it is not as good as the best overall pattern, which is the American Woodland BDU. For all purpose, it's hard to beat this pattern. It's modeled, it's multicolored, it does not highlight you, it breaks you up sufficiently. You add a little bit of coloration, a little bit of natural camouflage to this. This is probably the most effective pattern you can use. Without question, the finest sniper camouflage ever developed is the ghillie suit. Now, ghillie is Scottish for guy, and indeed it was in Scotland that this effective camouflage was born. As worn by our spotter today, a ghillie suit, we'll give him a second to come to his feet, covers his entire back so that he can lie prone with it. He was, in effect, invisible when lying prone. A spotter, if you could turn backwards, consists of many layers of burlap and other colored cloth tied into a net that is sewn on the back, the legs, and the back sides of the arms with a matching hat. In this case, it's an American jungle hat to which numerous strips have been tied. Important point, you'll see in a moment, I'm going to show you a little detail of these loops or squares, but each one has at least one piece, one strip tied to it. Because it's tied rather than sewn or stapled or something, you can take it off if need be to change coloration. And you can add some more coloration later if necessary. The actual strips are anywhere from about 12 to 18 inches long, looped through once, tied with a single knot. If you would turn back the other way. Now you notice on the front, we've glued naga hide. You can do the same thing with old rubber inner tube rubber. Glued that to his knees and to his elbows. If you lift an elbow there. To his elbows so that he can glide a little better across the ground, and underneath each is a compressed sponge to protect those knees and elbows a little bit. But otherwise, we keep that front relatively clean to facilitate low crawling. Our Robar SR90 sniper rifle is equipped with an excellent Parker Hale bipod, but what do you do if you're in the field and you don't have a bipod? You can make a field expedient one by cutting 3 sticks about a ½ inch diameter, about 12 inches long, take a bootlace, tie them together. This is technically a tripod, but that's solid. The appropriate movement techniques employed by a sniper are determined by the available concealment on the route he intends to use. When the available concealment is taller than his body, then he can walk almost erect, but tactically. Here, the spotter is leading the team through moderately high brush, and he's using a crouch walk, again moving tactically, taking advantage of the available concealment on his route. And when he encounters waist-high brush, he has to again modify his movement technique so as to remain invisible. In this case, he's going to the high crawl. What distinguishes the high crawl is that his elbows are not on the ground. He's walking on hands and knees. And now our spotter has encountered knee-high or lower grass, so he has to reduce himself even lower to a low crawl. You notice that his knees and elbows are now on the ground. He's not walking with hands and knees, and his belly is actually dragging on that ground. The lowest and slowest movement technique of all is called the sniper crawl, in which the sniper's belly, his back, his head, everything is pressed as low and tight to the ground as possible, because available cover and concealment are so slight, and his only mode of propulsion is pushing with his feet and pulling with his fingers. This might be the technique that he'd use to creep across a road or through a very shallow fold in a field that bad guys would not think he could cross. Typically he'd be wearing a ghillie suit, but to demonstrate, we'll be doing it without a ghillie suit. There's really no mystery to stalking. It's just common sense. That is, applying the proper movement technique to the kinds of cover and concealment that are offered to you by the terrain. The hide is a position from which a sniper engages targets. Usually it's a temporary position. The sniper is looking for concealment and cover. But the first criteria that a sniper uses in selecting where that hide will be is whether or not he can engage targets within the sector he wishes to. Look at this expanse before us. Between the roads and trails out there, there are probably a good number of likely locations that we would detect targets. But let us say we went with the cover and concealment of that lone tree. Sure, there's some shadow there, there'd be some ballistic protection, it's in low ground, you've got tree trunks, you've got foliage, but it is so conspicuous that I guarantee you, anyone who takes a shot from anywhere in that general area instantly will counter fire, they'll maneuver against you, they'll try to call suppressing fire. Instead, looking in the opposite direction, still about the same distance from our sector, are many trees, many opportunities, confusion. When a bad guy hears a shot from this general area, he will not be able to pinpoint the sniper's location. And now we take into consideration another important criteria, and that is having an escape route. After taking perhaps 2 or 3 shots, that sniper team can low crawl through the heavy brush along the base of that finger, go over a short saddle, then they've got continuous ballistic protection to their front. Probably my favorite kind of temporary hide is a ditch. The reason is, for infiltration, it offers ballistic protection and concealment from enemy observation. You can select many points along it as your hide to actually engage the enemy. And when it's time to bug out, you've again got ballistic protection. About the only thing you have to be careful about is if you do this too often in one place, the bad guys are going to start planting mines and booby traps in the ditches. A similar kind of hide would be the ridge, a finger ridge, in which you use the reverse slope. Come up carefully, pop a shot, and scoot. How many rounds should a sniper fire during an engagement? That's long been a source of contention and barroom arguments among snipers, and there are no clear, fast rules. But think about this. The very first shot you fired may very well be the only one you'll have against an unalert enemy. It has to be against the most valuable target within your field of view, because after that first shot, the bad guys have all disappeared into cover concealment. They may even be returning your fire. The second shot gets iffy. I mean, you might have a valuable target out there that's worthy of it. But a third shot, they're all alert, they're waiting. and they know such things as crack, bang as well. So that third shot is probably the max. It might even be dangerous. But just as there seem to be steadfast rules for many things, there are also exceptions. The essence of counter-sniping is locating a hidden gunman so that you can then bring your own fire on him or maneuver against him. Perhaps the simplest way of doing this is paying close heed to where you hear the sound of his rifle shot, and if you know your position on a map, shooting a magnetic back azimuth. You may have to compensate for the difference between true north and magnetic north, but once you plot that and you examine along that direct line, you'll probably be within 5 degrees one way or the other of where he was. Focus on what would be likely hides along that straight line and examine it minutely with optics. A similar technique uses a rifle rod to trace the ballistic path left by his bullet through soft material. Big danger when you're standing close to the impact point as I am now, you're within his sights. You may have to mask your front with smoke or wait till darkness to do this. But you take a rifle rod, place it in that bullet path left through soft material such as a tree, the side of a house. It will point directly back to where the sniper is located. You now have a straight line. To determine how far he is along that straight line, look at the angle the bullet was plunging when it struck that material. If it's relatively flat, probably 200 yards or less. A gentle plunge, this is probably about 3, maybe 400. You start to get a dramatic 30, 40 degree plunge, it's probably 500 plus. By the time you've got almost a 45 degree, it's probably 700 or 800 yards. When a hostile sniper is concealed and engaging people in an expansive area such as that before us, and in which there are no likely or obvious hides, and really searching for them is like looking for a needle in a haystack, one technique you can employ is called crack bang. And by that I mean when he fires around, the sound of his bullet, which is supersonic, creates its own little sonic boom, which is heard as a crack, kind of like the sound of taking a ruler and slapping it on a desk. But meanwhile, following it behind it, and much slower, is a sound from the muzzle of the rifle. This is the sound most people associate with a weapon being fired, the bang. What we want to do is measure the difference between the crack, which is what you hear first, and the bang, which is what follows. And we do that by practicing a 1 second 5 count. What do I mean by this? Train yourself to count to 5 in 1 second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There. Now, when I hear the crack of that round overhead, instantly I count 1, 2, 3. Bang! I hear the muzzle. I know he's 300 yards away. This is only effective out to about 500 yards because that bullet starts slowing down and that sound, which is constant, about 700 miles per hour, starts catching up. It gets muddy after 500 yards. But out to 500 yards, if you practice that 5 count, it's very effective. You've come to see the amazing variety of skills and tactics and fieldcraft and marksmanship skills that are required to truly become a sniper. Should you want to refine that knowledge even further, there's a companion book to this video of the same name, The Ultimate Sniper, undoubtedly the largest and most comprehensive book available today on the subject. I would heartily encourage you to practice, practice, practice. I've never heard of a sniper whose abilities decline because he practiced too much. And never forget that sniper's creed: 1 shot, 1 kill.